let characters grow and let characters evolve. And it's what the characters do that make this fun, that make this interesting.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. How are we doing? Hopefully you're all keeping well. And welcome back to the Forever DM, the Abbott to the Abbott and Costello of Clash of Quests. So Clash of Quests is a show that we stream every Saturday, and it's a bunch of Forever DMs that got bored of being Forever DMs and finally decided to get together and play the game. At the very least, tune in because it is an absolute cluster. My guest today is actually possibly the most unique tag that I've seen in quite a while, which is Jib. But yeah, Jib, Jason, how you doing today, man? You doing well?
I am spectacular. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure, man. So like, just super quick before we dive in, how long have you been in and around D&D and RPGs for?
40 years.
It's not bad. It's all right.
Yeah,
it's all right.
I've been a little bit.
Yeah.
I started with the Red Box in 1980.
So you've got a few credentials.
I've played a few games here and there. Yeah.
Yeah, one or two. Okay, do you know what? Like, so usually I start by asking people what edition that they're currently playing, but I want to start a little bit differently with you. So have you played every edition of D&D?
Yep. Every last one of them.
I feel like you're the most qualified to say this. What's your opinion on 5th edition?
I think 5th edition is a good expression of the game. I think it's a good expression of what D&D tries to do as a game.
Okay.
And I think it makes the game accessible to players and DMs or GMs, as you prefer, while keeping some truth to the original vision of the game.
Okay.
In full disclosure, and I don't want to get political, I do want to say one thing, though. I do have some issues with WotC from a political standpoint, and I don't want to go deep into that. That's not what we're here to talk about. But I do want, in the nature of full disclosure, I have some issues with them as a company, and I will continue to do so until they correct themselves.
Okay, so actually, this is quite a good opportunity for us as well. So us here at Forever DM and Clash of Quests, until those issues are sorted out, even though we will be using obviously the 5e system, everything will be homebrew, and we will not be buying anything else, and we will not be supporting Wizards of the Coast until those issues are sorted out.
There are so many amazing, wonderful, creative, talented people of every stripe. And I guess one of the benefits of living in Southern California, as I do, is that I get to meet them. And we have too many amazing, wonderful, talented people of color, of whatever gender, of whatever they want to identify as. That is not something that should ever inhibit anyone. And
agreed.
I want those voices to be heard. If I can take 2 minutes and say, WotC, get your crap together right now.
Yeah, no, I back that.
Make a tiny little bit of difference. I want to do that.
No, I back that, and I would urge anyone listening, even the new DMs that are just diving in. I know you guys have just got your bright, shiny player's handbook and your Dungeon Master's Guide that's just being delivered on your doorstep, and you're itching to go. I would, in this case, argue to delve into homebrew, just for now. Like, you can listen to this to get all the tips and tricks, but they need to sort their stuff. They need to get their stuff together.
Agreed.
I back you on that, and I respect you a lot more for bringing it up and saying it, because it does need to be said, and it needs to be said from, not just said, but shouted from every single, yeah, every crenellated top. Okay, so you've been playing Neon for 40 years. That's incredible. Like that's not to remind you of your age.
No, that's fine. I have children. They remind me of my age.
Every single day.
I was in a bookstore with my mom, and I saw the Red Box, and I was like, I grabbed it, and I'm looking at the cover, and I'm like, oh, this looks so cool. And I read the back, and I was like, well, this looks like fun. I need this. And I said, hey, Mom, can I get this? And Mom looked at it, and she went, done. And the die was cast in that moment.
Ah, your mom's awesome.
Yeah, my mom has actually played.
No, she's even more awesome. That's incredible. Yes, that's what you're supposed to do. Like, if your kid shows interest in something, you should totally back that up. Yeah,
I agree.
So your mum didn't fall for the satanic panic then?
No, no. And we actually lived in the southeastern United States at that point. I'm a little surprised, but knowing my mom, I'm not. So,
That's the, I mean, obviously now you do praise our Lord God Satan.
Every minute.
Back then it was fine. It's fine. Okay, so like over the years, have you seen, as far as sort of the evolution of D&D, is there anything that you wished kind of would have been brought over from other editions? Or are you happy with the evolution?
It's kind of funny. There were things about every edition that I thought were really interesting and fun. And several years ago, I was on a podcast and I commented that my first edition AD&D books had disappeared. I know where they disappeared to. We don't need to go into what happened to them. I know what happened. I said, that if I could put my hands on a set of first edition books, that I would run a game of first edition at a convention. And one of our listeners sent me a box that contained all of them. And I was like, dude, this is so awesome. Thank you so much. I will send these back to you as soon as I'm done with them. He said, no, they're yours. I was like, okay, well, how much do I owe you? He said, no, they're yours. I'm going to make this happen. So I sat down and I started reading the first edition rules again. I was like, why did we play this? Oh my gosh, why did we? This is so painful in some places. And then I ran the play test for the game and I went, oh yeah, that's why we played this, because it was fun. And I think that's true of every edition. And I would actually suggest to people to go back to earlier editions and play them.
Okay.
Just to get that experience, because D&D as a game is, what it does is very specific and it creates a very particular game experience. And it's a fun game experience.
I mean, I agree. That's the reason I'm here. It's the reason we're here.
Yeah.
Because like D&D is like, it's such a great game. So again, you're literally one of the most qualified people that we've spoken to so far. I'm almost drowning in the amount of questions that I want to ask you.
Go for it.
Being a DM, being a player, what would you say is your sort of your top 3 tips? What makes a good dungeon master? Like, what makes a good game of D&D?
Okay. The big things to me are, one, as the DM, do not assume you know what's going to happen, because you don't. I have said repeatedly, and this is a quote that feel free to use if you like. Okay. As the DM, I know for a fact what is going to happen in the game right up until the moment the players step into it. From that moment on, all bets are off. As the DM, if I go into a game thinking I know what's going to happen, I am making what I consider to be the number one mistake of DMs. And that is, as the DM, I am not telling a story. I am the producer. I am the stage manager. I am setting things up for a story to happen. The players are who actually tell the story.
Okay. So then would you argue that, I mean, I know we've just kind of discussed like homebrew and modules and improvisation versus preparation, but would you then argue that you need to kind of be a little bit higher on that improvisation scale? I'm actually on both sides of this, because what I do is I want to know the world. I want to know the world. I want to know the people in it. And I specifically want to know who are they? What do they want to accomplish? What resources do they have to accomplish it? And how far will they go to accomplish it? Because if I know that, then I can respond to what the players do appropriately. Okay, so I get very detailed about those things. Okay.
What I do not get detailed about is the story. What I don't get detailed about is the plot lines. I know what these people are up to. I know that this necromancer over here is trying to raise an army of undead because he wants to take over the world. Got it on that. What I don't know is what's going to happen.
Okay. That's a pretty solid tip. What about the other 2?
Be flexible.
Okay.
Okay. So for example, when you look at a situation, like, I'm going to take something simple. There's a locked chest in a room and it has a piece of information in it. Okay.
Okay.
The critical part of this equation is not how the characters get into the box. The critical element of this is that they get the piece of information they need. Okay, so when your player comes up with something really wild and I never thought of that. I'm going to tell you a story in just a second. I never thought of that. Run with it. Run with that. Let that happen.
The rule of cool.
The rule of cool. And that does not mean that everything happens the way they want to. And my third tip is going to be how to deal with failure. Because I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but I'm going to tell you a story first. Years ago, I ran a Pathfinder game that was a campaign that spanned a year of real time. And on day one of that campaign, I knew what the main bad guy was up to. I knew what he was all about. The following year was all about building up to the confrontation with him. And when we get to that confrontation, we've been building up to this fight literally for a year. We roll initiative, and the wizard in the group happens to get first action. I said, okay, what are you going to do? He said, rock to mud. And he casts rock to mud in the area and drops the necromancer and all of his vampire minions into the mud. I'm like, okay, well, now they got to figure out how to get out of that. I'll deal with them in a minute when their turn comes up. Go through the rest of the round. Nothing all that exciting happens. Okay, the necromancer and his minions are trying to get out of the mud, deal with stuff and whatnot. We come back around to the wizard and I said, okay, what are you going to do? He said, mud to stone. And I was like, oh my God, that is brilliant.
That is a remarkably audacious, ballsy, amazing move.
And I was like, that is so brilliant. I want to see that happen. I want to see how that plays out. And that's the thing, is because I don't assume that I know what's going to happen, I can be surprised by the amazingness that happens and excited about what the players are doing.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, you are providing a game for your players. You are the conduit for that, but also you're there to have fun as well.
Right. Exactly.
You can't drop that, otherwise then it just becomes boring for you. But yeah, by allowing yourself to also enjoy that aspect of the storytelling. Yeah, you get to have your cake and eat it too.
Let it flow. See where it goes, and be excited about that. So my third tip is how to deal with failure. Now, failure comes up on the dice all the time.
True.
The question is, what does that mean? If we take a binary approach to it, it means that you did not get the thing that you wanted. And that's okay. And there are some cases where, that's probably the right answer. But what if, instead of saying, oh, hey, Rogue, when you were trying to pick that lock on that door and sneak by those guards and you failed, it's not that you can't get the door open. You can get the door open. It's that something interesting is going to happen as well.
Okay. Such as?
So we're sneaking through the Baron's castle, and we're trying to break into his vault because we want to steal all his goodies, because that's what we're about, right?
Yeah, totally, yeah.
And okay, Rogue, crack that lock. Rogue fails. Okay, cool, awesome. You're able to open the door. That's fine. You've got the door open. However, it happens at that particular moment when 4 guards walk around the corner. Ta-da.
Okay, right.
So and the reason for that is we're not letting the failure on the dice block the progression of the evolving story. We're using the dice as a medium to make the story more interesting.
I like that. That's actually quite an interesting flex that I haven't personally used, but I can see that being a real fun way to progress the story.
This is a thing that comes to us from other kinds of games, like Powered by the Apocalypse games, where it's not that you don't get the thing that you wanted to do. It's that now the GM or the MC, depending on what they're called, now has the opportunity to do something, to make something interesting happen. And by taking that philosophy and applying it to more traditional games like D&D, it gives me the freedom to say, okay, this thing happened and this thing happened as well.
I like that. That's really cool. That's a really nice effect. Every now and again, you do find yourself in a situation where a failure just wouldn't make sense.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of revert to things like, well, you slip on a rock. That's what happens. It was raining the previous day. I'm going to give you
another one to go with it.
Yeah.
Never roll the dice if it's not meaningful. Okay. And a good friend of mine who is one of the authors of the Fate role-playing game, made the statement once, we only roll dice when you and I disagree about the outcome of something.
Okay, that's all
That's
right.
the
Yeah,
only
that's
time we need to
interesting.
roll dice. If you and I agree about what's about to happen, go, let it run, let it do its thing. And never roll the dice if it's not meaningful. And if you roll the dice, by God, make it meaningful.
Okay, so on the flip side of that, then I would. How do you feel about the DM rolling for effect? So when the DM would just like you as a DM, you know it means nothing, but you pause and you roll the dice just to kind of add tension.
What I would say is that's fine up to the point where the dice hit the table, and then I would take whatever the dice say, and I would do something with it.
Okay.
So if things are bogging down, they're kind of, the players are kind of slowing down, and I'm like, I want to just like juice things up. Pick up the dice. Okay, cool. I just put the dice down on the table. I'm going to use that to make something happen.
Okay. That's okay. That's fair.
I may be simply, rolling the dice randomly and going, okay, dice inspire me. Give me an idea to work with.
So that too. But I was thinking more along the lines of, so the players are already in a tense situation. So they're currently, so they've just opened the door to the Baron's sort of treasure room. The guards have walked around the corner. They've had a scrap with the guards. They've won, and now it's just before you're about to jump back into RP, and you're just like, okay, so you open the door. There is the treasure room in front of you, and you just roll the dice for no reason whatsoever. And then the players may assume that something's about to happen, and you say nothing. And you're like, well, what do you guys want to do next?
I get where you're going, and I dig it. What I would do is I would say, I have this dice roll that I just made, and it may not have meant a thing when I picked them up. And you guys walk into it, and you say, okay, so what are you going to do as you go into the vault?
But you then use as a...
And I'm going to use that as a springboard to say, oh, and this happens.
Okay.
Might be something that I hadn't even thought of.
It's not an effect that I use often, but I've used it once or twice. That's the reason I asked. I just wanted to get your take on it. Like I've used it a few times just to ratchet up the tension a little bit, and it usually results in some form of profanity from my players, which is mainly what I aim for.
The reason that I say I would try to then use it to make something out of it is because, in my experience, I can get away with rolling the dice and not doing anything with them about 3 times.
Okay.
Before somebody at the table figures out that I'm rolling the dice and it doesn't mean anything. And then from that point on, they'll ignore it.
Okay.
But if I use it to do something, even if I'm like, I'm going to make a note because, this is a thing that they don't know about yet, but I just had, the dice just gave me an idea. So I'm going to make a note, and this is going to come up in a little bit. It's not going to come up right yet. It's going to come up in a little bit. Now, one thing I have done is I'm going to hand a player a note that says, read this note with a very serious expression. Think about it for a moment, and then look at me and shake your head, and then put the note away. Because I guarantee you that will have the players going, what just happened? What just happened?
I like that. I dig that.
But then I'm going to make something happen. I'm going to make something out of it. I'm going to see what the players do, and I'm going to make something with it. Years and years ago, I was sitting at a table, and there's a conversation going on between some players, and the player sitting next to me was fairly new. And I just looked at her and I caught her eye and I went, boink. And she went, what? I went, and I waited a second and I looked at her again and I said, boink. And she's, now as it happened, she had decided it was night and, things were kind of winding down. Some of the player characters were in the bar. She was in the baths. She wanted to go down to the baths and take a bath. And she was the only person
Good place as
there.
any to do it.
Yeah. And so I made this random noise. And over the next 15 or 20 minutes, she got so wigged out that she ran screaming naked from the baths because of a water drip.
I like that.
I'll take that.
Random sound effects that really mess with your players for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
So we've talked about D&D, and you just sort of touched upon a different RPG.
Mhm.
What would you consider to be one of the best sort of alternatives to D&D? Like, say, you don't want to play D&D, but you still want to play an RPG. What would be your go-to?
It's going to depend on the nature of the game that we want to play.
Okay.
Because, and if I could walk you into my dining room, you would see that between my wife and I, we have like 2 complete walls of gaming books, and her collection is bigger than mine. So,
well, there's always at least one reason to get married, and I guess that's it.
I guess, yeah. But so it's kind of like, what do I want the game to do? What do I want the game to present? And what do I want the game to give to those of us who are sitting at the table? By and large, though, probably a statistically high margin of the time, my go-to is going to be something powered by the apocalypse.
Okay. Why is that?
And the reason for that is that we can build a game pretty quickly, and we can have games that do very, very specific things. You want teenage superheroes? I got that. You want mission-based cyberpunk? Got that. You want 1970s cops and robbers? Got that. You want, whatever it is you want, it's there. There's something there that does that.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair.
Apocalypse World is a game, but it's also a framework for creating a game.
It's funny you should say that. Like, 3 hours ago, I was sitting in my local geek bar, which has just opened up, chatting to one of the guys there. Basically said exactly the same thing you did. He used it to create a pirate game. So he was trying to get his friends into RPGs. Mm-hmm. And he was like, well, what do you like? And his friends was like, oh, I don't know, pirates. And he was like, all right then. And just came back a week later and was like, cool, we're just going to play this.
Want to do this? What kind of pirates did you want? Did you want Pirates of Penzance? Did you want Black Sails? Did you, where do you want
to? Pirates of Penzance RPG. I'm all about that life. How do we make that happen? Can we do that now? Is that a thing?
We can do that. We can make that happen.
I wouldn't even know what that would look like. It'd be horrific.
Musical is what it would look like.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like 100%. Yeah. Like it's a musical RPG. That's it. Well, I mean, D&D. Is it D&D Beyond? Are those the folks that are working on the D&D musical right now?
Possibly.
I think it's D&D Beyond are working on a D&D musical, which is a concept for sure.
I like music. In my RPGs, I like to bring music and sounds and things that evoke emotion.
However, have you ever had your big bad guy break into a massive musical number about why he's doing what he's doing, or she's doing what she's doing? Not
a big bad guy, but years and years ago, random encounter. They were camped, and I'm like, what do I want to do? I'm like, let's have some ogres attack them. Ta-da, ogres, blah, ogres.
Yeah.
And we roll initiative, and the wizard goes, I'm going to cast command. I'm like, cool, dig it. What's the command? And she goes, sing and dance. And I went, okay. So the next thing we have is ogres singing and dancing, and pixies jumping out of the bushes. And hilarity ensues, which is something that I think you need once in a while in a game.
You do. You do need to write an impromptu musical number. It's just every now and again, just randomly break into Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Absolutely.
Any excuse really. This is more of a D&D related question, but what is your opinion on homebrew versus modules? Like, as a rule,
I think there are a lot of really great modules and a lot of great resources that have been created for the game over the decades that we've been doing this. My spin has always been kind of a mingling of things, because for years and years and years, I ran my D&D games in the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah.
So I used the Forgotten Realms framework to do my homebrew games.
Mm-hmm.
So I would use things from published material, but I've never really been good at running a published game, because I never feel like I own it as well in me personally, to be able to, at the drop of a hat, when the players turn left, which they're going to do, go, okay, we're going left, but the module's all over here. But when it's something that I've cooked myself, and I'm going to give you another tip.
Yeah, do please do.
You want to make, you want to get your player characters invested in the game. Make it personal. Make everything personal.
So, like, use their backstories that they provide.
You use that backstory. That it's not a weapon to be used against them. It's food for what's going on in the game. So if they tell me I have a brother that I don't know about, spectacular. We'll be bringing that in. But if you make it personal for them, they will be engaged. They will lean into the game.
I know. I honestly, I can't back that tip enough. It's a really great way to really up that engagement, to get your players invested into the game that you're playing. I have a question based off of that.
Okay.
So you've got 4 players, the supposed magic number.
Right.
You've got four players around your table, and you decide that you're going to use each of their individual backstories in your campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, food for the campaign. How long do you spend per player? Do you try and keep it even, or if there's one storyline that's a little bit more interesting than the others, or do you literally just leave it to the players' pacing?
I try to keep it even with a caveat. And that is that if I have someone who is leaning out of it, there's like, don't make me the center of attention. I don't want to be that. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to force you. I'm going to nudge you. I'm going to try to pull you a little bit, but I'm not going to force you.
Okay.
The other side of that token is if I have, and I do have players who are like, I'm going to eat this scene completely. Great. Awesome. Slow down. Hang on. I've got somebody over here. Hold that thought for just a second. Well, I've got this person over here. Because I have some spectacularly good thespian players who will, chew up whatever I give them. And that's great. But I do want to make sure that the other players have time for what they want to do too. And something that I've seen GMs do, I've done it myself, and it's regrettable, is when somebody over here says something and they express an idea or a thought or a course of action. And then, and I hear it, but I don't act on it instantaneously. But then somebody over here echoes it and I act on them. It's like, no. You've got to train your brain to go back to the person who originated it. And you've got to be aware of that. That's very fair. And always reward them for doing things that are fun.
So actually, what is your reward-based system? I use inspiration. However, the main reason I used to use inspiration was because my players weren't necessarily role players. Mm-hmm. Like, it was my character does this, or I would like to do this. It was never like, I'm very lucky to play the Clash of Quests that we do on Saturdays because we are all a bunch of DMs. We role play quite well. But I used to use inspiration to reward players, which would be just a reroll. Like just a re-roll of a dice, and it only lasted per game, and it never rolled over. But what do you use for your reward-based system?
I'll use inspiration. I will use story beats. So if a player does something that I think is fun, or if they even do something to stretch themselves a little bit, I will give them a story beat thing to reward them and encourage them to do that more. So if they lean into a scene more than they have before, and they're more into it, and they maybe make that leap from going, my character does blah blah, to going, well, I'm gonna blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, cool, awesome. I want to reward that. So I'm gonna take something from the story and I'm gonna make it yours, and I'm gonna give it to you. And mechanically, I like inspiration. I think inspiration is a great mechanic because here's a little way for me to give you a thing, gives you a little bit of more control over the universe for you.
Yeah, I personally I like it. I think it's just a nice little touch.
Right.
I've got one more question, and I want to get into something that I'm super intrigued about. So my question is this: is over the years, what has been your favorite supplement or module that's ever been released?
I will tell you that my absolute favorite module of all time, it is and always will be the Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh.
I'm gonna write that down. Why is that? I was about to say without spoiling it for the listeners, and what I really meant was without spoiling it for me.
It's a fun intro story that lets you lean in and explore some fun things about characters.
I'm going to look it up. Not only has you been playing for forever and a day, various different podcasts and all that jazz, you wrote a game.
I did.
You're like a proper grown up.
Oh, my wife would probably disagree.
It's fine. She's not here. We'll claim all the things.
Yes, I did. I have been playing a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games, and I am fortunate enough to be surrounded by people who are very smart and very creative and have created games, some of which have become some of the best-selling games on the planet. But what I wanted to do when I sat down was I want to learn how to create a real hack of Apocalypse World, a real and true hack of Apocalypse World. Now, let me level set a little bit. A hack is a game that is based on the Apocalypse World engine, but changes the rules a bit to do something specific.
Okay.
Okay. If all I'm going to do is change the names of things, then what I'm creating is a skin, and a skin is perfectly valid and perfectly fine and wonderful. But that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to create a hack.
Okay.
And I chewed on it for a little bit. I came up with several ideas, and then I was actually watching a TV show, and I went, "That's the game. That's the game that I want to do." And what I created was a game called Bad Streets, which is a game of gritty street-level crime drama based on TV shows from the 1970s. So like TV shows like Starsky and Hutch and Beretta and Toma and Policewoman and Mod Squad and these kinds of games. And I said,
gritty.
And I said, I want to do that. And I chewed on it, and it went through a bunch of iterations. And finally, one day, one of my much wiser friends than I said to me, "So, Jib, what is it that characters do in your game?" And I went, "Whoa, because that's a deeper question than you think." Because the off-the-cuff answer is, well, they solve crimes. Wait a minute, but that's not really what I was thinking about. And I realized that the characters in this game are not detectives. They are detectives in a crime show.
I get that is a distinction.
And so when they became characters in a crime show, it set the frame for everything about the game. There is no harm mechanic. There is no hit points concept in this game. The only way you can take harm is if you choose to, in the context of the TV show. And the only way you can get dead is, again, if you choose to. Now, what can happen to you is if the reputation of your character suffers. And that is the reputation of your character with the audience.
Nice. I like that. That's a pretty cool mechanic. I dig that.
It totally changed the frame of the game. But what I was setting out to do was learn how to create a game, because I wanted, like every other gamer on the planet, at some point, I went, I'm going to write a game. I'm going to make a game. The thing is, I didn't actually know what that meant. Just like very few other people actually know what that means. The creating of a fully fledged and baked game that's ready for people outside of my head was an effort of years to do. And when you look at all of these games, I mean, and I'm going to pimp a couple of games for people right now. A game called The Sprawl by Hamish Cameron. It is cyberpunk powered by the apocalypse. It is a mission-based cyberpunk game. It is spectacular.
I mean, I'm already in. It's Cyberpunk. I've just discovered Cyberpunk, and it's one of my favorite systems at the moment.
The thing about Cyberpunk is that Cyberpunk as a concept for a game and as a world for a game is spectacular. The mechanics of Cyberpunk are painful. There's just so much that you have to do, and it's but with a powered by the apocalypse game, you get the feel, you get the world, you get those things without the mass encumbering you. Another game that And I have to give you the whole title before it actually makes sense, because it is called Tears and Kisses, a Cyberpunk Fable.
Yeah, sure. That makes complete sense.
This is one of the most spectacular games of all time, and unfortunately you cannot buy it.
No.
Because the author has not made it available. But I've gotten to play it with the author, and it is a truly spectacular game. And
well, you're gonna have to bully him into releasing this in some.
My wife's all over it. My wife is all over it.
Like emotional blackmail, physical blackmail, like anything you've got, like actual threatening of violence, like
it could happen. It could happen. Another one of my favorite games right now is a game called Masks.
Okay.
Which is again a Powered by the Apocalypse game, and in it, and this is one of the reasons why it is one of my favorites. You are teenage superheroes.
Right. Okay. Okay. I'm getting a vibe. Yeah.
It is one of the most fun games I've ever gotten to run. There's actually a stream of our game of it that you can find. There are 12 sessions, and it is some of the best game I've been involved in, bar none.
Sure, I'll check it out. Yeah, I'll check it out. I'm always down for a lighthearted.
I'll hook you up with where to find it. What the common thing between all of these games is that they focus on character and on the evolving story of that character. Because from day one, back when when we were 13 and we were, it was like my concept of game prep was I'm going to draw a map. I'm going to say orcs and goblins. And that was my concept of game prep when I was 13, just like everybody else. But It didn't take long for me to go, you know what? We can do more with that. We can go beyond that point. And we can let characters grow and let characters evolve. And it's what the characters do that make this fun, that make this interesting.
It's very true.
So
it's very true. So Bad Streets, is that going to be available for people to play or play test?
If people would like to have it, I will happily, they can reach out to me and I will happily share the materials with them and they can go play and have a great time. I am going to produce an ashcan version of the game. What that means is that it's a cut, trimmed down version, with not necessarily so much in the way of editing or art or things like that, but it's got, what it takes to do the game. And I'm going to make that available for free for people. And then if people dig it and enjoy it, then maybe one day I'll actually, drop some cash and make a book and make it available.
That would be pretty cool. So if they did want to reach out to you and get hold of that copy, how would they do that? You
can find me on social media by doing a search for @JazzIsBlues, all one word.
See, this is the thing. You were doing so well, and now you're just going to annoy so many people by saying that the jazz is blues.
I'm actually quoting that statement from a friend of mine from another hobby, which happens to be playing jazz and blues guitar. And he's the one who made the statement that jazz is blues and blues is jazz. It's the same thing.
I don't know. I feel like I'd like to argue that statement on a separate podcast.
That is an argument I would love to have, because I'd love to pull the music in and go, here's how they're the same, and here's how they're not, and here's because
I worked in a blues bar for just a touch over a year, and it was one of the best jobs I've ever had.
Sweet.
We're gonna move into the last section. Okay. Usually at this point I say it's my favorite bit, but the whole episode has been pretty cool. But this is my favorite bit, mainly because when we record these podcasts, the way it works is that we throw up Zoom, and we have a little bit of a couple of minutes chat, just to kind of ease in, but you don't really talk too much about the episode and what's going to be asked. But I always make a point to never talk about the last section, because I want to see people squirm and I want to judge you horrifically for what you're about to say.
Okay.
So
judge away.
With that being said, I would like you to recommend myself and everyone listening a book, a movie, and a TV show.
Book, a movie, and a TV show. Book. The Expanse series by James S.A. Corey. It is, in my opinion, bar none, the best hard sci-fi story ever created.
Does that mean it beats Ender's Game?
Yep.
All right, then. That's my benchmark. Ender's Game is always my benchmark for sci-fi.
It is the best. And there's an RPG about it.
And a TV show now.
And a TV show.
It's been out for a while.
The TV show is a pretty good representation of the book. I won't say it's perfect, but it's pretty good.
Okay.
And I enjoy it. So TV shows, Vikings.
Yes.
Although there are some technical details in some of the things that they do that aren't, necessarily spot on with history, it's a lot of fun. And I think they do a good job of capturing the nature of who, Vikings were.
100% agree. And finally, movie.
That's actually the hard one. Because there are so many movies that I really like. It's hard to pick out what is my absolute favorite, but I will tell you the movie that my wife and I have watched like 4 times in the last month, and that is Ford versus Ferrari.
Okay, sure. All right. Give me a synopsis.
It is the story of when Ford went to Le Mans to beat Ferrari. This is mid-1960s.
Okay.
And it stars Christian Bale and Matt Damon, and it is just a huge amount of fun. And the characters, the way they do the characters are just spectacular.
I do like Christian Bale. I am a fan of Christian Bale. Okay. It kind of leads me on to my final question, which is the most important question that we all need to ask ourselves deep down, which is Dirty Dancing or Footloose?
Dirty Dancing.
Why?
Because I find the characters to be more engaging and more interesting, and their evolution is more interesting.
Okay, I'll take that. That's fine. I really want. I hope people at home are keeping track of these numbers, because I know that I am. Guys, thank you very much for listening. Super appreciate it. Hopefully you guys found that as interesting as I did. Don't worry, we will 100% be talking with Jib again, like 100% be talking with Jib again. But dude, thank you so much for...
thank you for having me on. It's been a ton of fun.
Like, honestly, like, I mean, everything. There's some really great tips there as well. Like solid, hardcore DM tips. There's so many, like I have an entire list on the left-hand side of my screen that we didn't even scratch. But yeah, thank you very much, guys, for listening. I do appreciate it. Don't forget, step my plug is Clash of Quests every Saturday. And you're going to need to bug Jazzy's Blues hardcore to get that Bad Streets playthrough. Let's make this a thing. Thanks, folks. As always,
have a great week.
Lucky.
Stay safe.
Stay safe, yeah.